Is Mike Tyson a great heavyweight champion, or is he merely just a very good one? Basically, is Mike Tyson overrated? Stay tuned to find out. Welcome to Joe's Jab, a channel for all things boxing. In today's video, I'm asking the question, how good really was Mike Tyson? To many, he was an all-time great. A monster knockout artist that could beat most past and present heavyweights, and many polls have him in their top 10 best heavyweight boxers of all time. But was he really a great? I feel that Tyson's fan-friendly, entertaining style, nostalgia for the great 90s era, his controversy, craziness, celebrity status, alongside the vast number of short clips from social media of his explosive pad work or huge knockouts, produced an illusion of a greater boxer than perhaps he was. Do not get me wrong, I think he was a very good heavyweight, I just don't think he was a great one. If you look at the facts,
I have to talk about facts because I think it's important.
It paints a very different picture of where Tyson sits in the elite all-time heavyweight rankings. To many, Mike Tyson was at the peak of his powers from around 1986 to 1989. And although that very well may have been the case, the amount of top quality heavyweights was okay, good, but no vintage one by any stretch of the imagination. Tyson's best wins during the 1980s were against former or future world champions like Trevor Berbick, where he won his first world title and impressively at just 20 years old, James Bone Crusher Smith, Tony Tucker, Frank Bruno, Michael Spinks, where he became undisputed champion, and Larry Holmes. All decent names, but other than perhaps Larry Holmes, you would not say any were great heavyweights. It is worth pointing out at this stage that Holmes was 38 years old at the time of fighting Mike Tyson, very much past his best, when he was knocked out by Iron Mike in brutal fashion back in 1988. Some may argue Michael Spinks was a particularly good win, as Spinks had won the gold medal at the Olympics in 1976, but he won that at middleweight, and his best days were really at light heavyweight and not heavyweight. Now, Mike Tyson cannot choose his era, just like Vladimir Klitschko couldn't choose his era more recently. However, the difference between Vladimir and Tyson is that Klitschko, after some early and devastating defeats, made key changes, dedicated himself to his trade, developed, improved, and went over 10 years undefeated and beat everyone of his generation, and only got beat to the likes of Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua near the end of his career. Tyson, on the other hand, started to fade around 24 years old, when you would think he should only really be getting better and better. He lost to Buster Douglas in an unexpected and key defeat back in 1990, but unlike Klitschko, he could not come back to the level of dominance that Dr. Steelhammer did. Although he did beat good names and won world titles again in the 1990s, he ended up losing to the elite level top fighters of his generation, notably Lewis and Holyfield. Many say that if a motivated and prime 1980s version of Mike Tyson turned up to fight Evander Holyfield and Lennox Lewis, it would have been a completely different story. For me personally, I would disagree with this, and I think any version of Mike Tyson, be that 80s, 90s or noughties, would have ended up losing to these two fighters. Now, the reason why is that Tyson never handled difficulties in the ring particularly well. When things were going on track, great, but as soon as he was dropped or being soundly outboxed and outpointed by a determined or hungry fighter, he unfortunately came undone. However, regardless of how you would have thought a 1980s Mike Tyson would do against these two foes of his, it's all hypothetical in the end, and we have to judge him on his performances that he did do against these two great champions. First up, let's talk about the Evander Holyfield fights. Tyson fought Holyfield twice, back in 1996 and 1997. Their first encounter is regarded by many as one of the best fights in boxing history. Their second is just as well known, if not more so, but for all the wrong reasons. We'll get to that one in a second. Their first encounter took place at the MGM Grand in Las Vegas. Most fans had Tyson a big favourite going into this fight, which in hindsight is quite incredible. The fight was a really good one, exciting and competitive, with both boxers having moments and delivering big shots. Tyson started fast, but Holyfield adjusted well and began to start taking control. And by the mid part of the fight, Holyfield was in control and dropped Iron Mike in the 6th round. Tyson got up and proudly continued to fight. Holyfield was continuing to have the better of the action. In the latter part of the fight, Holyfield's punches were starting to take its toll on Mike Tyson, and the final nail in the coffin came when Evander threw a string of hurtful, unanswered punches, forcing the referee to stop the fight in the 11th round. A huge win for Evander Holyfield. They had an immediate rematch, and had Tyson been able to avenge his defeat to Holyfield, this could have allowed him to build a case for greatness, in a similar vein to the likes of Muhammad Ali when he defeated Smoking Joe Frazier in their rematch, but it was not to be, unfortunately, for Mike. Their second fight became infamous, was known as the bite fight, as Tyson twice bit the ear of Holyfield in the 3rd round, leading to the referee disqualifying him before the fight really had the chance to get going. I believe frustration at being headbutted earlier on in the fight and the fact that Holyfield was already starting to get the better of the action fueled these moments of madness. Whatever the reason, fight night prevented Mike Tyson from achieving greatness. Their second key loss I would like to talk about for Mike Tyson is against Lennox Lewis. Now, Lennox fought Tyson when arguably both were past their absolute best, but it was even more clear in the case of Mike Tyson. Although the fight was successful commercially and the build-up was memorable and interesting, with Tyson biting Lewis's leg, wrestling him and shouting rude things to the media at their press conference, which was one of many crazy things Tyson did during his career. This fight could have been even bigger though had they met back in 1996 when Lewis was Tyson's mandatory challenger. However, this never materialised back then, which is a shame because it would have been a much more intriguing fight than the one-sided beating we saw in 2002. Again, this fight saw Tyson start fast in the 1st round, but Lewis stayed very calm and quickly took control, using his size, reach to great use, and regularly peppered Tyson with a good strong jab and used that jab to set up his power punches. This is how the fight continued right up until the 8th round when Lewis dropped Iron Mike with an uppercut. Tyson got up, but Lewis quickly jumped on him and finished the fight with a right hand, and Tyson failed to beat the count and was knocked out. So there you have it, my thoughts on whether Iron Mike Tyson was an all-time heavyweight great. For me, he just misses out purely because he had good wins on his record, but no great wins. Whenever he came up against another great of his era, he fell short and became unstuck. So that's just tipped it for me, really. It also made me think about how Mike would have done against other great fighters across boxing history, thinking about Joe Louis, Muhammad Ali, Joe Frazier, all the way to the likes of modern greats like Vladimir Klitschko, and I just see him just not quite winning those fights, and that again is tipping me to think about him as a very good heavyweight but not a great heavyweight. Thank you for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, give it a like and subscribe, And until next time, have a great day and God bless, my friend.